Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm good.
Good. Everybody put to sleep and relaxing?
Yes, just got them all down. And I actually just, everything's kind of chaotic down here because I just set up my office in my basement today.
Oh, nice.
So it's not set up, but I built my own desk. So if it doesn't
Wow.
fall, then I did it right.
That's a bonus, if it doesn't fall, right? But
Always.
you ready to get things going?
Absolutely.
Excellent. All right, this is going to be fun.
I think so too.
All right, I'll do my intro and then we'll get going.
Okay.
Hey, this is Mark Justice, and welcome back to Between the Lines. Today, we have author and publisher Jennifer R. Jensen. Jennifer, welcome to Between the Lines.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Yeah, I am looking forward to getting to know about both aspects of your business, and as I've told a lot of other writers I've talked to, one thing I really love about doing this show is the community I've come across on Instagram is so supportive and so wonderful, and involved, and encouraging, and such a variety of genres and styles. And so, it's a joy to get to learn every writer's process.
Absolutely.
We all start with an idea back here. We all end up with like a book or something up here, but how we get there, it's just crazy different.
Yes. And it's
Yeah.
there's so much in there.
Yeah. And so I'm like, to me, it sometimes I'm always surprised. I haven't come across anyone yet who's I could figure out, because everyone's been different. And so that's fascinating, because all I have is my own experience and a few friends who write, but I haven't, other than interviewing them, you just kind of know what you do as a writer, and so it's fascinating on this end. So I'll just start with something kind of a, big picture kind of question. I like these kind of just to kind of get to know you a little bit. Who are some of your favorite authors?
That's really tough. I don't want to say I'm a picky reader, but okay, for me to pick books, I don't like to go based off of any author particularly. I won't read it based off that it's that author or anything like that. I first have to get hooked by the cover, and that's, I don't want to say that's it, but that kind of is like, covers draw me in. So I don't really care about the genre. I do not read back blurbs. I do not read anything about it. I don't want to know what I'm going in to see. I want to be immersed into it right away. So I don't really have anybody that I like have to go out and read. Once I'm in the book, is whether it's like, oh my gosh, this is an amazing writer. And I think it's just more because I'm a writer. I don't want to say that, anybody's writing style is wrong or anything like that. I just know that there is a particular type of book that I like. Again, not in any genre. It's just how they tell their story, how they immerse us into that world. So I don't know if I really have any favorites. My recent favorite that I read for the first time was Colleen Hoover. And again, I'm not that I'm not a romance reader. I don't go for genre. I just go for what looks great. And I was recommended a lot to one of her books, and I loved her writing style. So I'll probably end up reading more of hers, at some point, just because I liked her writing style in general. But yeah, I like to try, new indie authors and traditional authors. I don't really care. I just want a good cover and then a great story to pull me in.
All right. What is it about the story that pulls you in? Because I'm a visual, covers are important. As a kid, that's how I would choose the comic books I would get with my $2 allowance. I could get 5 comic books. So I'm like, okay, the cover's got to pull me in, and a cover on a book, often, like when I read the Conan books when I was a teenager, the Robert E. Howard Conan books, and these covers are painted by Frank Frazetta, this wonderful fantasy artist. And I'm like, oh, here's Conan fighting this giant snake. Like, oh yeah, this is going to be awesome. So, I'm sold. So I totally get that. I love that. So when you get past the cover though, what is it that pulls you in that makes you want to continue the story?
It's the immediate emotional buy-in from the character. I mean, like I care about the plot and all of that kind of stuff, but why do I care about your character and why do I want to see them all the way through? So
Okay.
if they start off in kind of like an emotional, like this is what's going on in their life, I'm like immediately hooked. Like I have to know like, okay, what's going on? Like, why are they so sad or why are they so happy? Like whatever that deep emotion is,
Sure.
I want to either laugh out loud or cry or be super angry when I'm reading the book. Like I want to feel deep emotions.
Yeah.
And the sooner you can get me to do that, the sooner I'm going to be in love.
Fantastic. I'm going to do, it's a little early in the show, but I'm going to do a shameless plug
Oh, absolutely.
for
Do
a
it.
cover and see if this is something that might evoke some emotion from you.
That's super interesting. Oh my gosh, they sent him to hell and hell. Oh, so is that kind of like that reminds me of have you seen The Preacher?
Yeah, Preacher's great.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's one of me and my husband's favorite shows. So
Yeah.
is that like kind of that
No,
type
this
of
is this takes place right after the Civil War, but it's
okay.
it's a splatter western.
Okay.
Gage is and the truncated summary, which is not going to really spoil anything because you'll get it
Good.
real quickly.
Good. Yeah, don't spoil things.
Yeah. He's framed for a murder that he didn't commit and sent to this horrible prison in Hell, Arizona. And then wants to get revenge on the people who sent him there. So it's a simple tale of revenge,
That's awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
I will have to check that out. No, again, it's that deep emotions thing and
Sure.
Anger. Hey, that's one of those things I love.
Pure, unfettered, dark, bleak, grim, and violent. Revenge-fueled anger. It's pure. Fantastic. Yeah, it is. It was my second book. I think it's always going to be my favorite because it was the first time that I ever left everything on the page. That was me. Like I was not censoring myself or trying to conform to a genre. Yes. I didn't know there was a such thing as a splatter western before I wrote it, and I only found out after the fact that this is a whole genre. I was like, oh, okay, cool. But it was just pure id, and just the darkest recesses, and I just went as deep and dark.
That's awesome.
As I could. And just with the freedom of like, yeah, I'm just gonna, here it is, yeah. And I think that's why it's always going to be my favorite, because of that,
Hey, I get it. My stuff gets super dark, and there's just something about, because I think we're, as humans, like we're meant to be out in society and try to like put on this happy face and be like this. Like I'm a very, very bubbly person. Everybody always tells me, you're always so happy and stuff like that. And I was like, I'm like, it's not that I'm not a happy person. I absolutely am. But it's more of like, I'm conditioned to be like this. I was in customer service still am in customer service. So this is my conditioned way to be to people,
sure.
Like
right.
This is what you do. And so, but it's like, we have such deep emotions. And when I'm showing that, like, oh, I'm so happy all the time and all this stuff, that still builds up inside of you. And so when you're writing, you get to release it all into there. Every part of you, even if you haven't been through those experiences, you get to put your emotions into somebody else's story. And it makes it like, it's like you're writing you without writing you.
Right. We allowed to tap into those memories or emotions, or even if they're imaginary, we can identify with something in there. Yes. That's the human condition. I think that's what makes strong stories and good stories. Absolutely. When we think about even, like Shakespeare or, Homer, the Iliad and the Odyssey, who doesn't want to come home, Right. And I used to teach composition, and then I would teach Hamlet, because sometimes I was the only exposure to Shakespeare that my students, college students, had, sadly. And I'm like, Hamlet is going to be timeless, because it's got all the human emotions. It's anger and resentment and greed and lust and revenge so I totally get that. Those are the kind of the archetypal things that Jung would say, it makes us all connected. That's how we can relate, Yep. Excellent. Well, growing up,
Mhm.
what were some of your favorite books as a child that you remember, like some early books that you loved to read or that were important to you that kind of helped you get on the path where you're at now?
Honestly, I read all of the R.L. Stine Fear Street, all of them, every single
Oh,
one that was in my library, like every day.
I'm not familiar with Fear Street. I mean,
Oh,
I know Goosebumps, which I think
mhm,
was a brilliant series.
mhm.
So fun, but I didn't know Fear Street. What's that one?
So Fear Street it's just like Goosebumps, but it's more of like a teenage young adult reader.
Okay.
So like where if you're doing like Goosebumps, I think it's more aimed at like middle school, junior high, like
Yeah,
whatever.
adolescent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so Fear Street is like teenagers getting into
Oh,
trouble and doing like having the bad. It's the same thing as Goosebumps, just
okay. Just a
so
little more mature.
a little more mature.
Yeah,
Yep. I
nice.
love
Oh,
them.
that's
Yeah.
fantastic. I love that. I haven't read too many of Stein's books, uh, but I thought he's got a great niche. He's got a great way of telling stories,
Yes.
and it's kind of like reading a Scooby-Doo episode.
Yes.
In a way.
Right.
So growing up watching Scooby-Doo, I was just like, oh, I get the appeal. I love it. Yeah.
Yep.
Um, Now, you said some of your writing is really dark. So I want to get into when I was doing a little bit of research. I
Mhm.
saw that you write contemporary fiction. That's on your Instagram page.
Yep.
So how would you define what contemporary fiction is to you?
So it's so hard. So okay, I some people would call my books romance books, and I'm not against being labeled as anything, but I have such a I don't want to say problem. Problem's not the right word, but I don't like to be put in a box. I don't like people to say that this is what your books are, this is what genre they are, because when we put ourselves in a box as writers, I think that we limit ourselves, or at least we have the ability to do that because we start listening to then what the readers want. And don't get me wrong, I totally understand why people write for the readers and why people market for the reader. Like everything they do, I get it. As obviously as a publisher, like I totally get why we do those things. But my writing it's my passion, and I'm not saying for other people it's not, but for me, I write for myself. My books are my favorite thing. I wrote these books because they're exactly what I want to read. And because I know I'm such a niche reader, I wrote these books for myself, and they make me very, very happy to read them because it's exactly what I want. So if I was when I started like releasing them and had to label myself a certain genre, it was very difficult to me because that's when I started hearing, well, if you're a romance writer, you have to write this and you have to do this, and if you're women's fiction, you have to do this. And I'm like, but I don't want to do what people tell me to do. I just want to write what I want to write. Like I don't tell the stories, my characters tell me their stories. So I just want to get in their heads and I want to write, and wherever the direction goes, that's where it goes. I don't plot, I don't do any of those things. I just write.
Okay,
So
that was a question I'll be asking, but you've answered it. In the
yeah.
road, we'll talk about that process in a minute. I love that answer because I've always written, I was always more of a horror writer growing,
Mhm.
when I was younger, and then I wrote some comedies. The posters behind me are two of my movies,
Mhm.
and they're kind of parodies and stuff. And then when I started doing long fiction, I wrote my first book's a cozy mystery, which I'd never even read a cozy mystery because
Mhm.
it was started off to be a movie. And long story short, Hallmark's terms and conditions were horrible, so I said
Mhm.
I'll just publish it on my own as a book. And so I had to do my research, like what is a cozy mystery, and then kind of work within the boundaries of that. But
Right.
that's why my second book, Gage Black, because I
Mhm.
didn't want to be labeled as a cozy mystery writer. It's like I wanted to do as far as from each one as I could, and right, so I totally understand that. I have a bunch of books, of course, that I want to write all different genres and
Mhm.
whatever just makes me happy at the moment, whatever the appeal is, so I totally understand that. That's awesome.
Yeah, so
So
if I see in contemporary fiction, it's like I can kind of just, it's such a wide variety in that one label.
Right.
So it's just, because I'm currently working on a thriller, but I also have written a novella that is a fairy tale retelling. So it's like, it just kind of, I don't know, just goes into that whole thing of,
Yeah.
it makes me happy. So
I love that. You're a writer for all seasons,
yes.
multi-genre, or genre-less.
Yep.
You have to kind of put boxes in it, right? Yeah, and then that's the whole thing. I mean, that's why Stephen King wrote Misery, the whole thing about being pegged into that box.
Right.
And I had visions of that when I put Gage out. Is like I didn't want Kathy Bates to show up and hobble me and say, "You write more cozy mysteries, Mr. Man." So I kind of get that. So no, that's good. Well, speaking of genre, you're writing a thriller. Are there any other genres that you would like to try down the road? Like, yeah, I've never written this or that. I'm going to try that one day.
I would really like to be able to write a dystopian, or to write a oh man, it just went out of my head. The like historical fiction, but when you alter it, why am I not thinking the word for it? An alternate history.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I love alternate history books, movies, like whatever. We watched The Man in the High Castle on Amazon a couple years ago when it came out, and it's a series. And it was like, so for that one, it was when if Germany would have won World War II, and like if all that stuff wouldn't have happened or whatever, and Germany would have won and they would have taken over, it's what would have happened and what the world would look like years later. Okay. And that stuff is just so interesting to me, to see like the butterfly effect of things, right, of just one thing changing and how much it changes everything. I just find that so interesting. I think that I know writing is easy, but yes, you can kind of, go off into your own history. So you're just writing whatever, but there's so many steps that you have to get right in it. That's where I think that it'd be difficult for me, because I don't like to plan. You definitely have to have an objective and a set, timeline for those things. So I don't think I'm there in my writing process yet to be able to do that, but it would be fun.
Yeah. Even as an experiment,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's good. Well, so what was it that made you first want to start writing?
So I've been writing since, probably since elementary school. I first started out writing poems and song lyrics. I wanted to be a singer when I grew up. I don't have a terrible voice. I don't make dogs bark or anything, but it's definitely not great. My 3-year-old tells me to shush all the time when I'm going along to his Disney movies. So,
nice.
So that was something I just, it was an expression, of myself, everything I was going through as a kid. And music is probably the only thing that I love more than writing. As much as I love my writing and I'm passionate about my writing, music, it's that deep feeling, like when you hear a song and you get goosebumps and the world just seems to alter. Like music is just my favorite thing. And so with that, writing poems and writing lyrics and stuff, obviously it's, they're littler, there's not a lot of them. I had a journal of them, but that's where it started. And then it turned into me writing a couple different books. I actually just found some of my old books in the last couple months from when I was like a teenager. It's really terrifying to read. I want to share it on Instagram, but I also want to go oh my God. This is so bad.
That's a treasure trove, though. I mean, it's
so
a time machine back to those awkward early years when you're trying and failing, and because you just have no idea what you're doing.
No idea.
No, I know. I get it. I threw away years of writing because this was something that one of my creative writing teachers told me to do. Every so often, just don't keep the garbage. And I threw away probably 10 years worth of writing. I mean, just wholesale. And part of me realizes, most of it was crap. But there's still just the idea. I know songs and all kinds of stuff, and I'm like, man, it would have been nice to at least have it stored on some hard drive somewhere, that story that you want to share that you're really cringing about. Can you tell me what that was about?
Yeah, so it was so there was one I wrote earlier than that, but that was the first one that I wanted to get published. So I was working on that. I think I started it when I was like 15 or 16, and then I worked on it until I was like 20, 21.
Wow, a
And then
dedication at an early
yeah,
age. Good Lord.
yeah. I was surprised. Like looking back, I'm like, that was, I typed it up. I had it put into like a binder and everything. I had my grandma edit it because my grandma was super into that
Nice.
stuff. So she just read into it and everything. So
Fantastic.
it was, yeah, I mean, I did all the proper steps, but then I just never moved forward with it. So it was about, for as much as I remember, it was about a girl who had a best friend who was being abused by her mom. And so it was just kind of like their lives as teenagers. And it was a dual point of view. So it started out with the one best friend, and then it was to the best friend that was getting abused. And it was back and forth between their story and how we were seeing things from like the perspective of being abused, but then also from her, like how the friend was dealing with it and all of that. So
Wow, you weren't kidding about like being dark. I mean,
I know it was
you went
like,
right to this like oh wow, okay, we got a hard hitting family drama here. I was
yeah.
expecting something much lighter fare. You know, I mean, you're
Even back then it was all, I'm so many deep emotions all the
no,
time.
no, no. That's amazing that you're stick to itiveness. My first novel attempt, I was probably 16 or 17 probably. And my friends and I went to see a midnight showing of George Romero's Dawn of the Dead.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just blown away by it. I'm like, I love this movie. I'm gonna just, this is good. So I was inspired. So like the next morning, I was like, I gotta write a sequel. Feast of the Dead. That was my, and I got like, just I was like putting my friends in the story, and I'm like, yeah, I really, it was a whole like in the 80s. So we're like all this post-apocalyptic thing was really big
Uh-huh.
with Mad Max and Road Warrior. Plus, I
Yeah.
had a real love for like King Arthur and those mythos. So I got this combination of like post-apocalyptic. All my friends and I are running around wearing like, combat fatigues, but we're carrying swords, and driving around like these doom buggies. I'm like, yeah, this is gonna be great.
Oh, that's
Um,
amazing.
yeah, and I was writing it by hand. My mom was typing it up, and of course, being as ignorant as I was, I'm thinking like as soon as it was typed up, like now it's real. It's a real book. It's typewritten on a page. Of course, it's real.
Right.
Right. And then about 5 chapters in, I'm like, oh god, this is just shit. I have to throw it away. No. And I'm like, no, no,
Oh,
I'm not just
no.
not gonna do that. But that is awesome. I hope that you somehow share these at some ways,
I
sometime.
need to. I need the
Yeah,
world to see that like there's a starting point for everyone.
exactly. And I'm like I came really late into the long fiction game, so I get it. I wrote poetry. I did my undergraduate degrees in creative writing, and I did poetry, but it was done out of fear. Like I was afraid I couldn't carry a story with dialogue and I couldn't do fiction, all those things, and I just let myself just fall into that. But I did have a, a real love and affinity for imagery and language, which worked well for poetry, and then that carries over into my fiction writing. So my short
It does.
stories would tend to be really densely packed, and so I guess it all works out,
Right.
all.
And well, and I think that it's great to start with poetry because what I've been or what I want to talk more about on like my Instagram and TikTok and stuff is um the way that words flow. So, when people write poetry, when people write lyrics and stuff, like they're not necessarily rhyming. We know now that poetry doesn't have to rhyme, lyrics and stuff doesn't have to rhyme. It's the flow of it. And it's the same thing for writing. Like when you're ending a chapter or you're ending a scene, it's how you're wrapping it up. It doesn't just abruptly end. It is the flow of the words and how they sound. It's, when you're reading it out loud and when you're hearing that, it should be like poetry. It should be like music. And that's where, that amazing writing comes in, because when you're reading this, it's not just the words that are on the paper, it's the flow of the words on the paper and how they're sounding to you. And I think when people have a background in music or in poetry or anything like that, you can really hear that in their writing because of it's the flow. It's how it's being said. Because again, the words aren't necessarily the big part of it. It's how your sentence structure is. It's how everything rounds at the end of it.
Yeah. And when you're writing, when you come to an end of a chapter, you know when you've got a great line to finish that chapter.
Yes.
You know, it's either going to be a line that's going to say, allow a reader to say, okay, I've read for tonight and I could put it away, or it's going to be one of those ones where it says, God damn it, I got to read another chapter. You know, I can't stop it. Right. And as a writer, it's fun to kind of play with that. Those, you know,
Absolutely.
that.
I want to make you stay up all night reading.
Yes, yes, I totally get it. A writer who does that for me is Richard Matheson.
Yes,
He,
things.
yeah, he, you know, his wonderful novella, I Am Legend. I used to teach that. And you know, this chapter endings were sometimes like sledgehammers.
Yes.
You know, the chapter where he gets the dog and loves this dog, and in the last sentence, in a week the dog was dead. It's like it just like it just took the wind out of me, you know, and it was like a punch to the gut, and I'm like, damn, you know, but that's masterful. I mean, was just a brilliant writer, one of my favorites. So yeah, I totally get that. And when readers, particularly on my last book, that I've had when readers tell me, I had to read this in like one night. I couldn't put it down. I'm like, oh,
it feels so good.
It's amazing. Like, wow, that's fantastic. Thank you. You know, I'm glad that there's a part of me goes, wow, I wish it would have lasted longer. But at the same time, I'm like, you know, you stayed up all night to read the thing.
That's great.
I'll take that. Yeah. Well, we'd already talked about what makes a good story to you, what pulls you in. Are those the same things that kind of, when you write, are those same elements are what makes a good story for you as a writer?
So my like objective, I guess, as a writer, besides just kind of getting my deep feelings out, is I want people, well, two things. One, when you finish my books, I want you to have that book hangover. I want you to be lost in thought on what did I just read? Like how, like the world seems different, because we all know that we've read those books where you get done with it and you're like, somehow my life just seems different somehow. And there's like days where I'm just thinking about that book and going like, wow, like something inside of me changed when I read that. And I want my books to do the same thing. So in you know, the same vein as that, I want people to learn something, and not necessarily like they learn something new that they didn't know before. I want them to feel something different. With my current series that I've been writing and am currently working on too, I want people to be more empathetic to people they don't know, situations that they don't know. My series is largely based around addiction and mental health. And they're so stigmatized in our social everything. And I had my own biases before I wrote these books. My intention was not to write books about addiction and not necessarily about mental health. That wasn't when I started, like I said, I had zero direction. I just started writing. Right. So it developed that. And because I research a lot for my books, it's very, very important to me that I'm accurate and not portraying anybody in a negative way or a biased way or anything like that. So as I'm doing all this research and writing from this character's point of view, I grew as a person. I now look at things completely different than when I started my books a couple of years ago. And so my empathy has come a long way. And I want people to be able to learn that same thing and feel those same things, because I myself may have not been through addiction, but the people in my life that have, I now feel like I understand them a bit more. And I feel like the way that I talk to them, the way that I approach them, the way that my words are and my tone and my demeanor is very, very different now. And it's because I haven't been through the situation, but I've been able to, I feel like I've looked through the looking glass or their eyes of why people do the things that they do, and why people are the way that they are. And I think that we as a society judge so quickly. that I want everybody to just kind of take a break from that and go, why is this person doing this? And now we can see why they're doing it and see the wheels turning and why they're making those decisions. So when they see somebody in their life that does that, they can go, oh, like I've seen this before. I've read this before. And this is why they made that decision. I wonder if I'm doing anything to like cause that to be worse, or if maybe the way I'm acting to them can be more helpful. Maybe I can be more kind. And so I just want that self-reflection and that growth from people when they read my books, which is a lot to ask, but that's
considerable. Yeah. I mean, that's far more than, than I think a lot of writers going into something would ask of their readers. I mean, I think simply to entertain is often, something that, that's on my end. Like, I just want to have a good story. I'm like sitting back going, wow, you are trying to move people. You're going for the Nobel, and in a way you're really trying to make a serious change and touch people through your words that it transcends just entertainment into something life-changing, those kind of moments where we can, if we take those things to heart and apply them, that would be really wonderful. I mean,
that's my goal, is to just, I want to make a difference. Like, I have so many things in life that I want to do, but my main one is just, I want to leave this world a better place. I know that that's so cliche and all of that. I'm just full of cliches and I'm okay with it. I mean, there's so much sadness and darkness and all this stuff in the world. And I just, if I can make even one person change their mind, like I said, I'm obsessed with that butterfly effect.
Right.
If I can affect one person. So like, even let's say that my books only ever got read by one human, and that one human was inspired to write something because they read mine and they loved it. And so they wrote something, and then theirs went on to be this huge success. To me, that's a success to me, because that is, I changed not only that person's life, but because I changed their life, I changed all of these people's lives too. And I think that all that started when I was younger in school, like in elementary school, and we watched Pay It Forward, or maybe it was junior high, but we watched the movie Pay It Forward. And when I saw that, like, first of all, that was probably the first movie that just moved me so much. And then like, that's where the idea, I guess, started in me to like always want to do something nice. So like, my thing is, I always want to go out of my way to do something kind for someone, to make somebody's day better. And because I never know what person I'm affecting and what they're going through, and how much that ripple effect can go out and just change all of these people's lives.
Right. It's a good thing that you didn't watch, a movie like Hostel or, something like that. Your lives would be changed for a different place. Yes, we're going to be harvesting your organs tonight.
Murdered everybody in the day.
Pay no attention to the bathtub full of ice. Don't worry, that's for later on.
That's great.
No, that's good. We all have those ambitions, and that's pretty lofty.
Yes, it is.
I was waiting for the cynical joke to come in, like, yeah, plus I get my 5%, headhunter fee for inspiring. But no, that's wonderful. This is one of the joys about doing a show. It's like that. What you just said there was totally unexpected for me. So no, I love that, and I love that I can help facilitate that in a small way to kind of get your message out there. No, that's fantastic. I love it. We're going to switch gears a little bit, going back into more writing stuff. And since this may or may not apply to you because you being a pantser, but we're going to talk about world building. Okay. I know it's more prevalent for like fantasy writers and such, but how do you go about designing a world? Because the characters have to live in a place, so you still have to establish some kind of scenario or world for them to live in. So how do you go about designing your worlds?
So, well, since I only really have my one main series like finished and out now, it was based where I live. So it's in Michigan, it's in the greater Grand Rapids area. So it was very easy for me to world build what I know. And I kind of took that from, Stephen King. You just build where you live down right there.
Right.
So I threw in some of our, popular places that we have here in the Grand Rapids area. I I wasn't specific about schools and stuff like that, because I knew that there was going to be different like connotations or things or whatever, that bad things that I would say. And I didn't want it to necessarily target any
You have to
specific
fictionalize your real world a little bit.
Yes.
Yes.
But like the restaurants, the hotels, like anything that I'm, talking about, like, I know that they're good places. So, I talked about them. And so yeah, it was more of just, since it's, contemporary, it was able to just set it here and not have anything, too world buildy. I think that it was more, I have been told, my stuff is very, very character driven. So I have it's mainly dialogue. People love my dialogue. They say it's, very realistic. And that's because I talk it out. Like I will make sure that I listen to it, that I read through it out loud, that the conversations would actually be said like that. I talk to myself all the time, but it's, I just, all of that, because I do more of a character driven instead of world building, because of the type of genres and stuff. I haven't had to go too deep into all of that. I mean, it's again, it's nothing I really thought about. They were just kind of afterthoughts of, hey, I can talk about this hotel, or I can talk about, this restaurant, but nothing planned.
Yeah.
So.
Well, characters was the next thing I wanted to ask about. I mean, you've already been talking about that, which is good. So how do you go about creating and developing your characters? Because you said your characters talk to you, and I love how you speak out the dialogue. That's something I don't think I've ever done, because when I hear it, I hear it in my head. I know the voice of the narrator. I know sometimes I hear the characters. They don't talk to me. I don't talk to them. We're not on speaking terms. I say, shut up, I'll write you when I know. Nothing like that. But I just think that's a fascinating process, and one that would apply for like nonfiction types of writing. If you're writing a speech, or if you're doing something like that, or a poem, especially, if you have the rhythm and cadence and the rhyme and the meter and all those things. So I love that aspect. And then of course you would know what things don't work.
Yep.
These little tropes that that I see often, that like no one talks like that.
I know.
Good day to you, sir. And yes, it is rather balmy weather, is it not? Like no one's gonna say that.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Maybe one quirky character is allowed to talk like that in all the group.
It's fine if you tell, like, if we know that that's a thing, but it's like sometimes I think people, they're just so used to hearing, because it is a trope. So like we're used to hearing certain people talk like this or whatever, but it just because you see it happening doesn't mean that it's something that does happen. Like things, I did learn that when I was researching, like, so my one of my books has to do with like court and stuff like that. So I got a lawyer involved, and she like read through and made sure everything was accurate, that they would say the things that the way they do. And it's funny because the way that it's actually done is not the way it's portrayed on TV. And so it's so many people, when they're writing their books, they're like, oh, I'll just mimic, what I've seen here, on TV. And I shouldn't say many people, I don't know how people do their research, but if people follow the stuff off of TV, then it's not the same. And so it's just like you do the research that way, for me, it's got to be dialogue as well. And I have to talk it out like we're acting for a play. And so I'm reading through these and I know how it's being said. And I do all the pauses. So like if there's supposed to be a pause, that's when I say like, he said, or she said, or I said, or whatever. And then I go on to the rest of it. And a lot of, I shouldn't generalize, but some of the books that I read, they just go into this full paragraph. And I was like, I'm a fast talker and I talk a lot, but I still have to breathe. I still play with my hair. I still do these things. And I was like, so do your characters. So let's know what they're doing.
Right. No, I love that, because sometimes your characters, I've got one in my cozy who's a flibbertigibbet. I wanted someone who was like a touch point. She was in touch with all the news that was going on. And again, this goes back to Hamlet. The very first act of Hamlet, we have the guards talking about what's been going on, so for the sake of the people in the audience. So now we know, here's what's been happening in Denmark. Great, we're all caught up. I wanted that character like that. Like, who could I find who's this very talkative, very much not really so much rumors and gossip, but just kind of likes to know everything because she's just so genuinely enthusiastic about everybody. And so I just painted this like kind of this, you know, kind of a bright and chipper dog walker, you know, with her hair in the pigtails, and she's always wearing like neon colored like spandex, and she's walking like 12 dogs, you know, and she's kind of bordering on the annoying, but eventually you love her because she's just so cute and quirky. But flipperty gibbet is the word. And when I kind of envisioned her, I'm like, I know exactly how she's going to talk, and I could hear it, you know. No, that's good. I do want to make a recommendation if you're still going to do anything with court. There's a comedy called The Grinder. Are you familiar with this?
No.
Do you have Tubi? Do you have like a Roku? Okay, or a Fire Stick or anything like that?
No, but I mean, we have a lot of apps on our TV. We have the TVs, the smart TVs or whatever. So
okay, Tubi is a channel, Tubi. It's a free channel, and it has all kinds of great content. There's a show that came out a couple years ago. It was only around for one season, called The Grinder, and it's got Rob Lowe, and Fred Savage, and
I feel like I heard about that.
Yeah, it's Rob Lowe plays an actor who played a lawyer called The Grinder, and his famous catchline at the end of every winning case is "Grinder rests," you know. And the show is done. He doesn't know what he wants to do with his life, so he moves in with his younger brother, Fred Savage, who is a real lawyer, and then their father is also a real lawyer, and so everyone loves Grinder. But the common part of the comedic taste is like Fred Savage is always like that's not what a real lawyer would say or do, and that just you're reminding me of that. You got to get a lawyer to say this is how we would do it and say it. So if you just want to check it out, it's called The Grinder. Well worth the watch. It's very funny. Okay, so you create your characters. Is there a process that you go about creating these? I know you speak their dialogue, but when you're creating characters, how do you do that?
I feel like I always have terrible answers for these. They're out of thin air. So like I said, I don't, plot or anything. So when I'm writing them, it's just like they start. So when I started my series, Harper is my main character, and she literally was in my head, just having a monologue. I was driving home from Indiana, and I kept hearing a monologue over and over in my head. And I was like, so, okay, I got to write this down. So I pull over to the side of the road, write it all down, get home, type it all up. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, I don't know what this is. At that point, I hadn't written in probably 8 years. I took a very long hiatus from writing because I was becoming a mom and businesswoman and everything else. So I didn't think I had the time. So I was like, I'm not going to do anything with this. Just going to sit there. And then when that lasted like a day, because I was like, no, I got to come back to this. Like, this is here. So
enough of that vacation. One day. Right, what are you, a slacker?
Right. No, and it was so funny because my husband, he had been telling me for years to get back into my writing and all of that stuff because he knew how much I loved it. And so I started writing. And as I'm writing, the characters just kind of like come in. So they introduce themselves, and I'm not planning on like I never know where anything is going. Like I literally have no direction. So when I'm writing it, they'll introduce themselves. Now I won't know if that's going to be like a main character that we're going to end up talking to, or if that's one we're never going to see again. And so it's very funny because I end up writing my own, like I end up putting Easter eggs into my books without knowing that they're going to be Easter eggs later. So I'm 6 books into my series now, and different people show up at different times, or there's like different connections. And if if you read them in order, and you probably, if you read them a couple times, would be able to identify some of those things. But for me, it's like, oh, that's really cool. That actually goes back to the first book.
Look at me. I'm so much better than I thought I would be.
I know. Every time that happens, where I go, oh my gosh, that's from the first book. Like I didn't even realize that was going to become a thing. That's what, like, it brings me so much joy, because I was like, I didn't even plan that. That was just random. And I get so excited. I'll call my sister and I'll be like, oh my God, guess what I just did? This is really dumb, but I'm really excited about it.
This is joyous and fascinating, hearing this, because the opposite of a pantser. There's plenty of room for discovery as you write, because I don't, I'm working on the second of the Cozy series. My outline's like 23, 24 pages long, color coded. It's that comes back from my years of academia, and teaching compositions. Like, it's all about, you gotta organize your ideas. You gotta make sure everything's in order. But it helps me because, especially with a mystery, you're purposely leaving those breadcrumbs and red herrings and all those things. So I'm also trying to develop a larger story arc with the main character, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And that's all over the 4 books that hopefully she'll be self-actualized by the end. We'll see. But it's still, you have to, even though I have all this really detailed outline, you still have to put word after word, sentence after sentence to kind of get from point A to B to C. And it's at those moments where I find, even though I have all the planning and invention and intention and imagination and discovery kind of happen, that's, those are the moments where, like, oh, wow, because you as you're writing, your brain's continually working on the thoughts you've had before and trying to anticipate what you're going to do next. And then it has this amazing creative ability to go off in places that you never consciously thought of before. So I love that that's part of your creative process. I find it amazing that you can, but you're not the only one. Other pantsers I've talked to have said the same thing. Like, not comparing you as writers, but just it's astonishing to hear that, something I wrote in this book I had forgotten about, but I'd like, oh, this happened in this book. Oh, and how nice how it turns out. I'm like, my brain's like going, it's just like melting out of my ears. Like, I would have to plan that like ahead of time. Like, my mega arc, this is the plan, but how do you do it by accident? And it's just like, my accident would be, it would just come out all garbage. It's like, I can't plan by accident, but my accidents come in those moments of discovery, like little things that happen along the way. And because the story is told through the main character's point of view, and then there's an omniscient narrator, but she also finishes the narrator's thoughts, and there's a lot of internal monologue. That's where those discovery times happen, where she's trying to filter, she's trying to process, she's trying to make sense of life and to solve this mystery at the same time. And so no, I get that. And so that's fascinating to me that you can you have like, oh, 6 books later, this came back in, that's just amazing.
And it becomes like such a main point. And that's why I think it's so funny when that happens, is because it'll literally be like a sentence. Like, I just barely mentioned it in like book 1, and suddenly it's like a main point to like this 4th book or whatever. And I go, how did I get from there to there? Like, how cool, because like, I forgot that I even like mentioned that, and it just became this like big thing. And it's like, and it works. And it's like, but if you have read the books as many times as I have, you'd be able to go like, oh, like that's where it started. That's really cool. And so I just say that I create my own Easter eggs, and I don't even know I did.
That's fantastic. That's wonderful. So which of your characters would you most like to have a drink with?
That's tough. So I would probably say Leo. So Leo he's somebody that we meet later in the series. I'd probably say him just because he's like the most like my husband. He's just,
in a good way? I mean, okay. Okay. I thought your husband's like, oh, come on, Jennifer.
No, I'm sure he, well, my husband hasn't read my books. But so I did write a book of Leo's, from Leo's perspective. And I do want my husband to read that one, because I put some of our actual moments that have happened to us in that book. And it's not our love story by any means, but it is, him and his wife have a very long relationship, like me and my husband have. So I was able to use when they get engaged, it's actually our engagement story. And a couple of the random stories I've put in there are actual stories that me and my husband had. So I'm curious as to what his thoughts are, because it was from, my point of view, obviously writing it, curious as to, because I was writing then from the guy's point of view for it. So
it was
interesting. Yeah.
No, I like that. It's important to put those personal stories in. You know, like your story set in where you live. My cozy set in a fictitious version of the town I grew up in. So all the pieces, all the like buildings are essentially the same. You know, the old
Yeah. You
drugstore that
visualize it.
yeah, it's exactly. I know where it is. So the people I grew up with in my high school who formed a book club to buy my books, because they all were like trying to find out, like, okay, they want to know, like, are these characters based on people they know or the places,
I
you know?
love that.
Yeah, it is. And it's so sweet. It's so
Same
sweet.
thing.
Yeah. And but like the memories that Abby has, Abigail, my character, a lot of those memories are mine as
Yeah.
well. So I totally get that. And then they're mine with a little embellishment, you know,
Yep.
but the basis is there, you know,
Yes.
and it I think that's what gives it the sense of reality. Is like, this feels real because it was a
It is.
real thing that happened, and you know how to tell it and relive it in
Yep.
a way that people go, oh yeah,
Yes.
I did
It gives
that.
them that connection because you can feel it when, you know, like you can, as a reader, as a listener to music, as a watcher of a television show or a movie, you can feel when the person writing it was connected to that writing. And that's what makes
Yes.
good writing, is like, you can feel when they didn't just phone it in, when it was, when they were there to put their emotions in it, you can feel that.
Like
And
Preacher, that you had mentioned before, Preacher.
oh,
Yes.
so
And have you seen Midnight Mass?
no, I haven't.
Oh,
I'll
do
write that
yourself
down.
a favor. Midnight Mass. It's on Netflix. Well worth the watch. That one you're going to want to, you could probably binge in a day. Excuse me. One second. No, that's, I totally get it. Yes, that reality is there, and
Mhm.
you do know that, but that's kind of why it makes it fun. So I'm curious as to why your husband hasn't read your books yet, and does how does that make you feel that he hasn't read them?
Um, so I'm not offended or anything by it. I know that honestly, most of my family hasn't read it. I have a very, very big supportive community of people like my coworkers, you know, people I used to go to high school with, like you said, like different friends, like very, very supportive community of people. Honestly, my stuff is really heavy. I think that a lot of my family either aren't there, a lot of them aren't readers, but on top of that, if they are, they really don't read the types of books, like, again, because it's just really heavy content. You have to be in the right emotional state to read my books. I have trigger warnings or content warnings on all my books because of how heavy they get. For my husband, he is a horror fan, and he loves nonfiction, and he loves historical stuff. So he's very like niche into those things. He doesn't like relationships in books, and mine are heavy into
Sure.
relationships, whether it's relationships with the family or friends or you know, like a spouse or whatever. It is very heavy into the different relationships in people's lives. So he would read them if I asked him to. So that's why I'm toying with the Leo book, just because it can be a standalone book if somebody wanted to just read one book. And so I had my other sister, I have a lot of siblings, but my older sister, I just gave her that book as well, because it can be read as a standalone. And while it is heavy content, it's different type of heavy content than my other books. So the sister that lives with me, she's read every single one of my books, every single draft of my book. And she's also a writer herself, but she writes, she's a screenwriter. So she writes more like fantasy type stuff. But I haven't read her stuff just because she doesn't show it as freely as I do. But yeah, so I want to get into that too, like the script writing. Like that's actually what I wanted to do, was to like make movies or shows. But it's, as you said, if it's not, like, it doesn't work well as far as like with the person you're trying to make it with or whatever, you just turn it into a book. So my goal is to turn my books into shows. And that's where I want to go. Cause as much as I love reading, I'm a huge TV buff. So that's because I'm a visual person, right? So it's like, that's always been my thing. And so I visualize all of my books as if they were shows. And I think that helps with the writing too. That got way off topic. Sorry, but
no, that's fine. I've got a list of questions. It's okay. I like the conversational aspect of it because I can come back around to something, but there was so much of what you say, it resonates with me. Having been on both sides, having done movies and books, but it all stems from being a visual writer.
yes.
Always had a wild imagination. And I think maybe in part because of the stuff I read as a kid, a lot of classic sci-fi H.G. Wells and things like that. And Jules Verne, just kind of fueled that love, and so when I write, I see it first. I see the characters, I know what they look like, I know what they sound like, but sometimes I don't know them until I write like a line of dialogue, and then all of a sudden like they fall into place, and as was the case with my last book, like I knew there's a villain and I knew this was going to be a fun villain to write, but I didn't realize how fun until I gave him the first line of dialogue. And then just like, oh,
that's
okay. And then he just began speaking, very, very condescending kind of, as you want to be a superior villain, like, and he's really funny. That's the thing. It's like, oh,
I love funny characters.
And he like looks around like, right? Like, you imbeciles don't get my humor, So no, and again, that was kind of an unexpected thing. Like, oh, this guy's funny, Right. So no, I love that. I love that. All those things. So I have some family who they like my cozy. They like that, but they haven't read anything else. I've got 3 other books, and they haven't read anything else. And my wife, she loves the cozy, and she got about quarter of the way through Gage Black and put it down. She said, I can't read it. It's just I can't get the images out of my head. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. That's a good thing.
Thing, though. Yeah, you painted that clearly.
Yeah, I even told her, I said, look, you can't read from page 116 to 127. You just do not. Right, I even told her, yeah, because I know, like, look, you know me for a long time. This is really dark, even for me. But so you'll probably really love it. I'll send you a copy when we're done. We'll talk. So yeah. Okay. But I always wondered, like, why my family wouldn't read my other stuff. Like Gage Black, I know it's not everyone's cup of tea because it's so splatter Western, but like my last one's a pulp action horror, it's like, it's a good adventure story, Like,
I think they're worried about if they don't like it. Like I did have a coworker that told me that she was like, before she read, so she had the thought before she read my books, but then she read my books and she was like, I didn't want to read the books. She's like, because I had to face you then. And she's like, and what if you were a terrible writer?
Oh, okay. No, yeah.
And I get that. Like, I totally get that. So
sure.
I'm never offended because I'm assuming that for a lot of people, it's either, a lot of people don't have the time. Like we're such busy people. So I get it. I'm never offended if people can't read. I have people tell me all the time, they're like, I'm trying to make time. And I was like, listen, like I have to listen to audiobooks because I have 0 time to read. So I like, that's where I get most of my reading done is through audiobooks because I'm in my car so often. So so I'm never, I get it. Like, and especially a lot of people have kids and like, who can read with children around? So
right. That's why I'm making a Gage Black pop-up book for kids, a coloring book. What color are the brains?
Oh my God.
They're gray, right? Splattered on the wall. Exactly, right. It's just going to come back with a 3-pack of crayons, just black for the gun, gray and red. Different
shades of blood red.
Yeah, that's all you need. Right. Yeah. So excellent. I just one question going back to your favorite character here, to Leo. You're gonna sit down with a drink. What would be the first question you would ask him?
Oh my gosh. I've never thought of these things.
That's good, right?
Yeah, that's the tough one. I
You've done
guess.
under interviews, I'm assuming, but I try to find different questions and things that are
No,
fun.
yeah. I mean, like my interviews always go like, I guess it always usually angles more towards my writing and not necessarily like in my books, which I love talking about my books. So
Sure.
obviously I'm with that. Um, that's a hard one though, because I feel like we've lived similar lives. So I guess and I don't know, because now that I've written a book from his perspective, I feel like I know him.
Okay.
So it's hard because like I feel like I would have all his answers. Like I know him as a human, and I love him. I told my husband I have two other loves in my life, and they're both fictional, but both Caleb and Leo that I wrote, they are both very real humans in my head, and
Yeah.
I adore them as people. And not that I don't love my main character Harper, but the thing is she is, you know, like she has relationships with both of them, and so it's important to me, like, you know, obviously like her feelings are feelings that I end up having too, because I had to feel them and we had to make them real. And so yeah, that's really hard, because I wrote a book from Caleb's perspective too, and I'm currently writing books on a couple other side characters' perspectives, so I've been in all of their heads.
Yeah, you really have that. That's really fascinating. That you would do that, because most books either have the omniscient narrator or it's told from a singular point of view. No, I like that. That was something I had considered doing after my cozy series is done. I was doing, if people still wanted it, because I was going to be like 4 and done.
Mhm.
But like there's a book, almost like a Winesburg, Ohio kind
Mhm.
of book where just telling little short snippets, or
Yeah.
like the Star Wars book that came out from a certain point of view.
Mhm.
I think it'd be really fun to tell the story
Yeah.
from, Miranda Cohen, that's the dog walker, from her
Okay.
point of view, because she's just bouncy and happy and like if she were to drink coffee, she would explode. Um, so I think it'd be kind of fun to do something like that, just to
Yeah.
see, because I I I don't have the kind of investment. I do have those. I mean, there are certainly characters really stand out to me. It's like, yeah, this one, I like this one,
Mhm.
very much so. I want them to be real in a way. Not all of them, but no, I totally get that. It's like that you've gone in their heads and written whole books about them. That is a whole other process, because then you really do know them intimately.
Yes.
Even as they are floundering themselves, you can identify with that floundering,
Yep.
and you know what they're going through. So no, I like that.
Everybody sees things so differently, and that's a part of that, empathy that I'm trying to, reach people with, is so, like when we see it from Harper's point of view, it's like, oh, we're seeing these people are the bad people because they're treating her and they're, the way that they are, and they're toxic. But if you jump into their heads in the other books, you're like, oh, like they're not toxic. They're going through their own stuff, and she's viewing it as toxic. And you as the reader are reading it as toxic. But actually, the way that they're treating her, it's, because of this, and this is how they're seeing it. And this is their perspective. And it's about broadening that, empathy, or that connection, because you're going, you know what, when I talk to somebody, I wonder how they're like, what it looks like from their view. And it just, because like the feelings that we have from Harper's books on these characters, once you get into their heads, you're just like, oh, like that opens up a whole new world, because they see the same people and they talk to the same people, but they have different feelings about those same people. And so it just opens up this whole thing of starting
Yes.
like, are people bad people, or do I just view them badly?
Was that a conscious decision to get your readers to be more sensitive and to be empathetic?
No.
Okay,
I
because that's
just,
what it's going to do. You're forcing the reader to go into different people's heads and seeing the same situation from different points of view.
yeah.
And that's where the catharsis comes from. I think ultimately you're going to be it's the catalyst for growth.
Mhm.
You're going to be confronted with something, and that you may not like, you may be uncomfortable with, and then you're going to be challenged to kind of move beyond that.
Yes. And that's where my growth really started to come in, because so I've gone through a lot in the last couple years, a lot of like personal changes since I started writing again. Just viewing the people around me, setting my own boundaries, knowing what people I want in my life or don't want in my life. And it made me start to look at every relationship and go, sometimes I am the toxic person. Like sometimes the things that I do, or like not responding to certain things or responding a certain way, I have to question and go, how am I coming off to them? And I never questioned those things before I started writing from other people's perspective, but I'm the main character in my life. Like this is me and this is the world I see it. But if I stop for a second and go, you know what, this is the world they live in and they're viewing me, how would I view it? Like if I were seeing it from their perspective. So when I'm treating them that way, to me, I know that I never have ill intentions. I know me as a person. I never set out to ever hurt another human being, because I have been hurt enough in my life that I never want anybody to feel pain. But I also know that just because my intention is to treat them well, me setting a boundary or me saying that I'm sorry, like we can't be friends for whatever reason is good to me, that doesn't mean that doesn't hurt them or affect their lives. So even if my intentions are pure, I can still be the villain in somebody's story, because that's their life and that's their story. So it's all about the perspective. And that's what I like that my books have ended up doing, is kind of forcing that perspective of, just because, like you don't think you're a bad person doesn't mean you can't be a bad person to someone.
Right. That's interesting. No, that's good. No, I like that. I mean, because I've gotten to the point in my life where I wish I had more middle fingers. I don't have enough, and which is that's a good way to go. But I'm also at the point where I understand that, and I'm just who I am. And I don't. But it does make you pause and think, and that's I can see right there that would be really attractive to some readers, and also other readers like, you're not going to make me, don't give me this touchy feely, make me think stuff. I don't want to think, just entertain me. No, I get that. That's a really kind of a challenging place to go.
It's really hard to market that.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, without using all the cliches, but that's I applaud you in that. I know I could, well, it's funny. I was just going to say I could never join you there, but in a way, your theme is kind of the overarching theme of my cozy series. It's called Seasons Change, like season apostrophe S, ownership of one season. And it's all about how we often get stuck in the ruts, uncomfortable things, patterns that we don't recognize, and how change is hard. And sometimes we need an outside catalyst to push us out of our change. And so my books have the mystery. There's no murder. But there are things that happen to people that push them out of their comfort zones and serve as a catalyst for growth, or at least change and hopeful growth. And so this is mirrored throughout Abby as she's over the 4 books, as hopefully she's changing as well. So I find it, and it's something as a reader, and this is one thing I find amazing. As a reader, I would never read this book. Like, I don't want to read about relationships. I don't care. I mean, I know me and what I like, but as a writer, it's a completely different enjoyment of creative process, has its own rewards in kind of weaving the story about these relationships, because that's what the second book is more about, that because she's evolved from the base needs of needing a job and things to now the second level is like connection and relationships and all this kind of murky kind of stuff. And that's mirrored by the fact that this is the spring book, so it's all yucky outside and it hasn't turned pretty yet, and it's all Good Friday and not Easter, and so as a writer, I'm consciously aware of like, Mark, you're telling the story with like lots of like relationship kind of stuff. I'm like, I know, shut it. I'm like, because I would never read it. Gage Black and Death's Head, that's where I want to live. So I just find that fascinating, that I can still get enjoyment as a creator of something that I would not consume. I don't know if that makes any sense to you.
Oh, it does. Yeah. I mean, I don't relate to that only because of the fact that for me, like I said, I write my books for myself. So it's
Right.
what I want to read. But I do know a lot of writers who agree with that. Like their books is not something that they would necessarily pick up. But when you're creating the content, it can be a whole different experience.
Yeah, and I was in that, like there was a band I was in college. It was a punk edge death metal band I played drums for. And I liked being in the band because I like playing music. I was in a bunch of bands, guitar, drums, the whole thing. But it was probably music that why I like some of the songs. I don't know if I would have like bought our album, but playing it was great fun.
Right.
You know, so I understand this kind of like there is a difference. There is a different level of type of enjoyment in creating than consuming. And the creative person in me, the artistic person in me wants to create. And as a writer, now it's challenging to work within the confines of this little community and introducing these characters and this ongoing story and connecting, weaving people's lives together and a town that has its own personality. You know, that's creatively, that's really exciting. And so that makes me happy, you know, as much as the consumer part of me is going, what are you doing, man? You know, right. Well, let's talk about your writing process. What part of the writing process do you like the most?
Just the act of writing. I mean, anytime that I can sit down and actually type words, or I mean, even if I can't have my computer on or whatever, just being able to write. I don't get enough time because I'm so busy with everything going on that I just don't get enough time to write. And when they say, they say you get like a running high when you run and all that kind of stuff. I get a writing high. And, I get that feeling. It's just so good when I'm writing. And, so when I do have like a couple hours to write and I dedicate to that or whatever, or if I'm writing for a couple of days in a row, I get that writing high. And then when I can't write anymore, or when I finish a book, it gets really bad. Like I go into like this fog for like a couple of days where just, again, everything just kind of feels dim. And because it's just, writing is just so phenomenal and I love it so much and I feel it so deeply. So then when I'm not doing it, like when I go from doing it to nothing, then it's definitely, it's like withdrawals. Like it's bad. Like I just miss it so much. So definitely just any time that I get to write, I'm just in my happiest place.
Well, that's good. Because there are just like with any kind of process, there are elements or phases of the writing process where you are the creative part, where you're getting ideas, you're brainstorming, and at least for me, outlining and the possibility of a new story. Then there becomes the writing, and it's always exciting. And then you hit the doldrums in the middle, and then by 3/4 of the way into a book, I'm like, I'm ready to be done with it. Like I've already know the end 1,000 times. I just got to force my fingers to write the words. But because then there's also the next book saying it's time to write me. You get to work, and so no, I totally understand that sense of, but then when you have to draft, then you have to come back to it as an editor, as with the kind of the cold light of day, you let it sit and come back to it, and that's a whole different part of the process. And you're hoping that most of what you wrote was actually all right. You don't want to have to like, I have to get rid of this whole chapter and write it again. You're hoping, but you just never know. So what is there a part of the writing process? I mean, I know the doldrums now between like projects, it's when you get it foggy, but is there a part of the actual writing process that you like the least? Is it finishing a book, or is it editing, or?
It's formatting. I absolutely hate formatting. Like,
Really?
and the thing, yeah. So okay. So this is funny, but, or at least my business partner would say it's funny. We have so many tools to format for us, right? And we had switched over from using, I don't remember what she was using before, but we just got Atticus. And so we were going to be formatting and using Atticus for our stuff. I am very, very picky when it comes to my books and the way they are formatted, which I'm sure a lot of people are. But at the time, now Atticus has since changed and you are able to do this in there. But at the time, when I've been formatting my books for last year or whatever, you couldn't format the indents to be 0.5. It was 0.25.
Oh,
and
that's odd.
And I couldn't do it. I was like, my business partner put it in there and it quickly did it. And she's like, see, the formatting took like 2 minutes. And I'm like, but it doesn't go over 0.5. And I was like, I can't. So because of that, I do my own formatting, and one thing being off, right? Like, so I format in Word, and I'm not proficient at it at all. It is something I'm stubborn and I'm bound and determined to learn and do. So you had talked about the page numbers and stuff earlier about, knowing how to start it. I literally just copy my book and paste it into one of my old already previously formatted books, and it just automatically has the page numbers where I want them.
Okay.
That is how I have gotten around remembering how to
That's fantastic. That's great. I can take 5 minutes and show you how to set up your page. It won't even take that.
I've watched so many videos on it, and for some reason I can never remember it, and I
just doesn't sink in.
Yes,
no, yeah.
Oh, so bad, because I only need it like every 4 or 5 months, and then like
Sure.
I just released 3 books back to back, and well, my third one comes out at the beginning of next month, and so it's like I did them back to back with a month in between, but it again, like when I'm very particular about like the orphans and stuff at the bottom, and making sure that nothing is cut off. Like I don't want a run-in sentence or the sentence going into the next page. It has to end. But if I end it on this page, then the next page next to it has to also end around the same time. So then I'm going through and like spacing everything out completely for my my paperbacks. So I definitely create way more work for myself.
Yeah, that really is.
I am just such,
right.
I'm a stubborn and very, very picky person. So
Yeah.
I own it that is the problem.
Hey, I get it. That's how that's who you are. It's who you are, Right. I hate when there's like one sentence that goes onto the top of a page, like it scrolls over. I'm like, come on.
Yep.
I either have to, when I see that, I either got to find a way to edit and cut it, or I got to add more to it. So I feel like I'm allowed to take up the space on the page. Like I've earned it. I've got a whole paragraph. That's not wasting a page. No, I totally understand that. Right. There was one time, I think in one book, might have been my third book, which was nonfiction, that I took one line and I put it in a smaller font. Just
so that it would go.
So it would fit. Yeah. I'm like, no one's gonna know that. No one's gonna know at all. I've done it. Yeah, no one so far, no one's caught me on that. So when did you first come to realize what your writer voice was? I mean, you've been writing for a long time, but there had to come to a point where you like started feeling comfortable, like, yeah, this is how I want to write.
I mean, it's hard to say because since I've only really done or like followed through with my one series, I mean, and I wrote from different people's perspective, but I think the voice really is just the fact of that I'm telling their stories the way that they want me to tell them. It makes it sound like I have voices in my head, and I guess I kind of do, but like that's where coming back into not wanting to fall into any boxes comes in. The fact that I write my books with no boxes. I don't plot because I don't want to write myself into this is where my thing has to go. I have a general idea where I would like things to go, but if I plot it out, then I know that I'm the type of person that will go, well, it's not matching up, it's not going here. And I don't ever want to restrict my writing. I want my people to be able to tell their story. I get a little restrictive when it comes to research, because if there is not at least a 1% chance that could happen to someone, I don't want it in my books. Obviously, like if I were to write fantasy, that'd be a whole different thing. But, when it's real life, I was like, there has to be a chance that would happen. Otherwise I don't want it in there. And so that's, I guess, the only restriction that I really give myself. And I just want to be open creatively. Yeah, the words, they flow.
Creatively. Yeah, that'll work too. Creatively. That's how my one character would say it. Creatively.
I love it. So I want to have that as much as possible. So I think my voice is just to just not restrict myself, to be open to whatever is going to flow out, as long as it's not harmful to anyone. My editor that I have, she is very good to like point out if there's any biases or anything that maybe could come off as not nice or not right. Even though there are bad things that happen, there's bad people, we talk about bad subjects, but there's a difference between talking about and like educating on a bad subject or whatever than there is of like when somebody's saying something in dialogue, or when somebody is like in her head when she's saying something that like just is something that maybe we say as a regular thing, but really isn't it's not something that's up to date that we should be saying. So, I have a very good editor that knows that I never want to, offend or say anything that I shouldn't be saying, or to kind of catch those things, because we all grow up with certain biases. We all grow up in certain areas where we're taught or whatever, certain things. And again, I just want to make sure that, like my stuff and my voice never harms or quiets or silences anybody else's voice. So that's kind of where I want to be able to tell my stories and tell my people's stories and all of that kind of stuff with freedom, but with also keeping in mind that real people do read my books. And if they relate to my books, then that could make them start going, well, if I relate to this, I see myself in here, and this must be okay for me to do. So I think that there's definitely a sense of responsibility in writing, and definitely in all the social aspects that come with it, that it's very important that we shed the right light on things. So. Okay.
Yeah, I guess in the non-restrictive genre-less way you write, that would be the way to go, and especially since you're trying to get people to think and to get them to change and be more empathetic, you would have to set that as part of your own caveat, your own sense of boundary, self-limiting boundary, only in as much as not. It doesn't have anything to do with telling the story. It's just perhaps word usage,
Absolutely,
and tone,
yeah,
versus content. No, I get that. No, I totally understand that. That makes sense. So I know you said you try to write when you have time, but do you have a favorite time of day that you like to write? That if you had it all, if all things were equal and you had to pick a favorite time?
Probably the morning. I'm a morning person. I get up super early every day. I have a really long time for work. So on the weekends, when I do wake up early, like I've been doing a lot with my business and stuff lately, but with no restrictions, I would just wake up and write. Like if on Sundays, I used to do this, and now I'm going to go back to it. But on Sundays, I will start going back to Panera, which is where I used to write at. And I used to go there every Sunday morning from like 7 a.m. to like 1 p.m. and just write for all morning. And I told my husband I need to start doing that again, because I've gotten so busy that I got away from my writing. And
you gotta eat a baguette. That's the thing. You got to start with a baguette. Right, yeah. By the time it's done, then you're ready to go.
There we go. I know. Yeah, you just eat, get ready. Don't want to lose that. So
yeah, that was my next question, or it kind of dovetails into what I wanted to ask. Like, do you listen to music while writing, or do you have other distractions? Because I know some people like it deathly quiet, and it sounds like you like the noise of being around people.
I'm fine with either. I don't really have a certain way to write. I'm just kind of whatever with everything all the time. I think it's just because my life is always just so chaotic. I'm just used to, I can hyper focus on what I need to hyper focus on. I think that being at Panera allows it to be chaotic around me, but I don't have to pay attention to the chaos. So I'm able to just write and do my thing. If I'm at home, there's chaos around me, but I need to pay attention, because if my 3-year-old falls off of something, like I need to be able to go help. Right. So it's definitely a different type of chaos. but I can write with my kids around. I can, it's maybe not as in depth of writing. I definitely don't write the emotional scenes or any like really heavy content. I don't write with the kids around just because I have to be in a certain mental space for it. So that's when I'll usually listen to some of my sadder music. I have like certain playlists. I have happy playlists and sad music and all that. And I'll listen to those to kind of get into the mood. If I know that it's going to be like a long process or a lot of scenes that way, I will kind of like do it leading up to it. The problem is my stuff does get really heavy. So sometimes it's very hard to like just snap yourself out of it. Even though it's not my life, I do feel like I just experienced it. So one of the scenes that I wrote in my second book, I didn't come out of that sadness, emotional state, whatever, until the next day. It was, I went to Panera, wrote it while I was there. And I came home and my husband's like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah." I was like, I'm probably just going to be a little off today. Cause again, like I'm usually a very bubbly and happy person. And so he immediately knows if something's up. And I was like, "Yeah, I just, I had a really, really hard scene today." And I was like, I just, I had to get there emotionally. I had to connect and it's kind of hard to turn that off. So the next day I was fine. Like when I woke up, but it's definitely, you're putting yourself in that state and, you're living that or you're thinking that, and it definitely, wears you down sometimes. So those type of things I try, again, not to be around the kids for, just because I don't want them to like be around mommy when she's really sad and they're like, "What's going on? Like, why are you acting like this?" So, so those are usually, if they're at like their grandma's or something, is when I try to write those scenes. So
good thing you don't write like serial killer books, Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, you never know.
Yeah. No, that's good. So, how often do you write or try to write anyway?
So right now, I'm, I have my publishing business and then I have my actual like day job that I go to, and then I have my children. So there's not a lot of time to write, but I am going to go back to writing every Sunday. Cause like I said,
That's fine.
the problem is, so I stopped writing when I was around 2021, and that's when I got married, and then we had, kids and jobs and all that stuff. And so getting back into it, a couple of years ago, it's like, I now find myself doing the same thing that I did 10 years ago. I'm like, "Oh, I'm getting too busy. I don't have time." And I'm like, "Wait a second. This is how you ended up where you were before. You didn't make time for your passion. You got burnt out, like you just blew everything up and went, wait a second, like, who am I?" Because this is what I feel like defines me. And a couple of years ago, I was in a very bad place and went like, I don't know who I am. I don't know what I want out of life. Like, I just had a really like deep existential crisis of, why am I here? And so when I started writing again, it was like I lit up. I was meant to be a creative person. I truly believe that. Expressing myself either through music or writing or whatever, I was meant to be creative. And in those like 8 years of not writing, I wasn't creative. I was busy. I was analytical. I was everything of like, this is what we need to do. And, I do all my business at work and I'm great at my job and that's awesome, but it didn't take any creativity. And so unfortunately, I got away from that. And then that burnt me out as a human. So when I realized that I was not making time for my writing again, I told my husband that starting this weekend, I'm going to start getting back into my Sunday writing. So I'll at least have between 6 and 8 hours a week now to write. And then depending how my schedule goes moving forward with the company and stuff will depend if I get extra time. But for right now, at least the 6 to 8 weeks gets me writing. So,
yeah, well, that's good. Giving yourself that time, it's also going to help make you feel a lot better as a person too. You're going to have the time for yourself. You have to recharge yourself in some way, I get that. I just got a handful of questions, and then that way I know that your time is precious. So I feel the time. I want to make sure you have that. So tell me how you felt seeing your book in print for the first time.
It was so weird. I thought that I would be like, I don't want to say that I wasn't excited because I was definitely excited. I thought I would be more emotional than I was. I see, you know, people's reactions of like pulling it out of the, you know, thing and being like, oh my God, it's here. And honestly, I think because of everything that I went through in the couple of years leading up to that happening, I think that I was so it's hard to say. So like me personally, because I've always been such an emotional person, I, you know, like I'm very, very happy, and like I can be very sad, and I can be very angry, and all those things. And I think that everybody always expects these big reactions out of me. So when I went through all of my growth and my changes and all this stuff in the last couple of years, I stopped wanting to do what people expected. And so my reactions weren't as big and boisterous and all this as they used to be. And so I was going through that whole phase when my first book came out. So it was like it was like, oh, this is really cool.
Your audio is going in and out. I'm sorry, Jennifer.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Let me know if it's still doing that.
I can hear it now. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it was very difficult because I had gone through these changes or whatever, and I was just kind of, this is really cool, like how awesome, you know, I was excited, but I just wasn't showing how excited I was.
Sure.
But internally, I think I was just really overwhelmed. I think that it was because I had wanted it for so long, like that before I stopped writing, the first time when I was 20 or 21, that was my goal. Like I was actually trying to get that book that I was working on back then published. And then I kind of like gave up on that goal because of everything I was doing. So I think to finally have it happened, I didn't really know how to feel, because it was like, I finally did it, you know, and it was like, this is really cool. But it also went, what do you do with this? Right? Like how do you do that? So we were actually, me and my business partner were just talking today, and we were talking to one of our authors that we're going to publish. And we were just telling her, you have to have some sort of celebratory thing, like do some sort of ritual on your release date, because it doesn't seem like anything has changed, because just because your book's out, it's not like you're instantly popular or famous. So do something for yourself. So me and my husband, we go out on date night. So every time I published a book, we just go out for dinner and some drinks. And that's my little celebratory thing. And my business partner, she goes out for a cake to get a piece of cake from her favorite cake place. So, you know, we all celebrate in different ways, but that's kind of what we started to do, because I think every time one comes out, I'm so overwhelmed that I don't know how to react. So I just don't react, and we go out to eat.
No, I like it. That's good. Yeah. Have you ever read one of your books a year or more after you published it?
No. So my plan is, once I am done with my full series, I'm going to read it from start to finish. And I am so excited to do that. But I still have a couple more books to write before the whole series is finished. So I can't do it yet.
It's going to be a really bizarre experience.
Yes.
Right. I had to do that when I started working on my second of the Cozy series. I had to go back and read the first one because it had been several years and 3 books in between. Yes. And so I had forgotten it. Like who the characters were, and like, you know, what they look like, everything, you know. And so I was really hesitant about reading it, because I'm like, oh God, this is gonna suck, you know, like, and, you know, and it wasn't as bad. It really turned out to be kind of a surprisingly not bad, you know. There were a few parts that were like a little, okay, Mark, you got a little sweet here, a little saccharine, but for the most part, it was a combination of, wow, this is a nice line. Who wrote it? You know, and like just sheer, like, I don't remember anything. Like being in the moment, you know how it is. You lose yourself in the moment. You're just typing, but go back to it, you realize, wow, you know, this actually, some of this holds up pretty well. This is actually, as a consumer, I was being entertained by my work, because I had forgotten about it. And it is a surreal experience, that one I'm really looking forward to you having. Yes. I think it's going to be good. Well, I also wanted to talk about, you are a publisher, and your company, Jensen and Shepherd Publishing. So Can you talk a little bit about this publishing company? Like, what led you to want to become a publisher?
It all comes down to people. So in my day job, I currently am a trainer, and then I'm going into a leadership position. But my focus has always been people. I always want to inspire people, and it's kind of a theme with me. It's all about people, making people's lives better. And, as an author, so when I got into writing again, I did everything. And then it was kind of like you said, when you were a teenager and you went like, well, it's written, so it's obviously done.
Sure.
Right. And it's like, that's it. So many people don't understand the ins and outs of the industry. And the indie industry is huge. And it's boomed in the last couple of years. We have all these indie authors. The problem is nobody, or not nobody, again, I shouldn't generalize, but a lot of people don't understand the industry and don't understand everything that goes into like each step. And I'm one of those people. I came into it going like, wait, what? I have to do what? So like when I joined Instagram, and after I had written my first book, and I was like, yeah, I'll just publish this. Like, it'll be good. Like, I'll just, throw it in this, whatever. And I joined Instagram, and there's Bookstagram. And so then I'm like, what is this? There's a whole community of people. This is great. And so I started, like reading people's posts and, listening to what they're saying and everything. And they start talking about like, well, you have, like, oh, do you have beta readers? And, are you going to send out ARCs? And I'm like, I don't know what those are. I was like, I have an editor. So, and then I was, like working on my cover art at the time, that I have done myself. But I wasn't using like Canva, and I didn't know how to use all those different things. I didn't know anything about book funnels or newsletters or anything. And so I actually met Caitlin, my partner. I met her on Instagram, and I had like posted something about just being overwhelmed with something. It was probably formatting, to be quite honest, because that was like the bane of my existence. But I posted something about something being really difficult. And she was like, well, she commented on my post and just said, hey, message me if you have any questions. She was traditionally published before, and now she's an indie author. So she's like, I know the industry really well. So just let me know if you have any questions. So I was really struggling like a couple weeks later, and I was like, all right, well, I'm going to reach out to her. So I did. And we clicked instantly. We just started talking like every day on Instagram. She helped me through the entire process of getting my first book published. Without her, I would not be published, and definitely would have gave up during the formatting stage. So she helped me through the entire thing. And then my second book, same thing. She, guided me through the process. Obviously a little easier the second time, but still lots of questions. So then, I get through, and I'm working on my third book, and we start talking about it. And we both had kind of the same thought around the same time of, we want to help other authors do that. She has the knowledge. I was gaining the knowledge at the time. It's very easy, like when you're in the thick of it, to kind of know what other people need. She's been around for a while. So she knows the industry so well. And then when there's baby authors like me coming, we need a simple, make things more simple for people, for them to understand everything, because there's just so much, right? And everybody tries to do everything at once, and there has to be stages to it. So we, just decided that we were going to start, have a business of the publishing business, and we want it to be for authors by authors. That's just our main target, is that people understand that we're authors ourselves. We're not looking to, become billionaires off of other people's work. We don't want that. We want to do everything that we think the traditional publishing industry doesn't do. They take away creative control, which we do not want to do. They take, a big part of the royalties, which we don't want to do. They don't help you with advertising, or at least unless you're a big name, they really don't do much with marketing. Some of the, vanity publishers, they make you pay back the editing and the cover costs, or they make you pay up front. We don't want to do any of those things. We are for the authors by authors, and we want to teach people how to run their own business, because as an author, you're a business owner. So we want to give them all the tools that they need to succeed, because if they succeed, then we succeed. So every time that we help an author learn their business and understand the market, we gain from that. So why would we not give everybody, all of our authors, the tools that they need to be successful? We also feel like, why stop there? So like, we're actually launching a podcast and a Patreon next month. And so we want to also, anybody that isn't one of our authors, we also want to help through the industry. So we plan on, having experts on our podcast talking about, different things people should be doing and why they should be doing it. In our Patreon, we plan on, giving out different helpful things, different, just different guides that you can follow, just different things, different platforms and stuff. But all of it is just aimed at, again, we want to make a difference, and we want the industry to be taken back by the authors, because we shouldn't be giving up our creative control. It's our voice. We have every right to share it, and we shouldn't be giving up the money from that, because it is our work and it is our voice, and we should be paid for that properly. So we just want to take back the industry, and hopefully people will see how we run things and will follow that same guideline and start changing the industry from the inside out.
It's a small ambition, right?
Yeah. Right.
No, I know. It's wonderful. But everything that you had mentioned before is why people, go to do KDP, self-publishing, because you retain all your creative rights. You can make your own covers. Your own editorial changes are ultimately up to you, and you're going to do your own marketing anyway. So, I totally get that. That I think it's been the single most disruptive element in the publishing world. Is that, and so I was doing a paper, a research paper into publishing, and found that even with the big houses, most books sell fewer than 200 copies a year, 1,000 copies in their lifetime. Most writers don't make back the advance, unless you're a huge name, because the publishers don't promote you anymore. And if you're a big name like Stephen King, you don't need promotion. You got the name. All I have to do is say, Stephen King's got a new book coming out. Ta-da! And that's it. No, it's interesting. That's really interesting. So for readers or listeners out there, watchers, authors, what kind of books do you look to publish, or do you want to publish? Are there specific guidelines or books that you're really looking for? What if anyone's interested, what are you looking for?
So we, in this first round of submissions, we just launched this year. So our first round of submissions opened up on March 1st, and it'll close on March 31st. We pretty much were open to any book over 50,000 words, any kind of genres. We're not looking for short stories currently. We're not doing poems or, those type of things right now, just because we have certain editors and stuff like that. So everything has its own type of editor needed, cover artist, all this kind of stuff. So currently though, we're, I think it's pretty much every genre we have. I currently am taking young adult, which goes through any young adult. So romance, fantasy, whatever. I take dystopian, fairy tale retellings, contemporary fiction, women's fiction, that type of stuff. My business partner, she is romance, fantasy, historical fiction, that type of stuff. When we have it listed out on our website under submissions, and then our next submission window is August 1st through August 31st. And then I think what we're gonna do is have a different submission, certain genres each week to submit.
Oh, okay.
Because it was kind of chaotic this month. And like I said, it was the first time that we've, had submissions.
Sure.
So we had a lot come in, and which is great. We got so many submissions. It's been a wonderful submission window. But it's very, for me, it's very jarring to go from reading fantasy to reading contemporary fiction, to reading dystopian. So I personally, as a mood reader, or as someone that likes to read all in the same vein at the same time, I would rather be reading the same type of books, each week, and getting through them that way. So, and it'll help with the organization process with it too. So, I think the books that we've looked to acquire, we're not done yet because submission window is not done yet. But the ones that we have like on the top of the pile and stuff right now are all different. We have fantasy in there, we have young adult, we have romance, historical fiction. So we're kind of all over the board. We do not want to limit ourselves as publishers. We do not want to shoehorn into one particular thing. We think that, everybody's voice needs to be heard. We want to make sure that we're kind of open to what people have to share. And it's all going to be about that writing style and what grabs us. So I'm not, I do the same thing with this that I do with my books that I pick up. So there's no covers with these, obviously. So I can't look at those. I do not read the blurb. I do not read the synopsis. I know they're sent to us, but I don't read them. My partner forwards over the email to me. I download the book and I read the book. I want to go in blind. You have time to tell me, like, I want to figure out whether it's a fantasy or whatever. But that's why it does take a little time to kind of adjust if I did just read a fantasy and now I'm reading something else.
Sure.
So but I want you guys to, the people that are writing it, I want them to have time to just kind of grab me. I don't want to go in with any, oh, great, this is this type of book. I don't want that. I just want to be able to read and be excited. So
that's great. Okay. A lot of people out there be like going, oh yes, I want to send something. So yeah, maybe I'll get an anonymous submission, Gage Black.
There we go.
Yeah. Well, I'm fine as a self-published author. I will send it to you just because I just want to know if it grabs you.
Yeah.
That's all. I'm fine with that. But I think that's really wonderful. What a wonderful mission that you have. And there are so many writers out there who don't have an advocate. They struggle. And I mean, I've gone through just my own submissions, and I know other writer friends who do the same thing. And I've kind of mentored a few people through the KDP process. And once you kind of learn that, then we get it through Canva. I love Canva as well. Designed 3 of my covers through Canva for some total cost of $1. So it's brilliant. So no, I totally understand that. So that's wonderful. I hope it does well, and that the writers who go and get published by you, I hope they're the ones who resonate, because that's important, and they're going to appreciate that, because that's the joy of writing, just telling your story like you. You're just kind of all out there and not being hemmed in. I admire the mission. I love it. You're kind of speaking to my heart there. So I applaud that. So, just a couple more questions and we're out of here. So you kind of hit on this earlier, and I think I kind of already know your answer, but what is your writer fantasy?
Meaning what?
Like at the end of it, like where do you see, like, okay, if you had to have a perfect trajectory for you as a writer, what would you want to happen in this perfect idyllic world with your writing?
I want to be able to make enough money that my husband is a stay-at-home husband, because that is his goal. Not a stay-at-home dad, a stay-at-home husband. He just doesn't want to work. So
that sounds good. Kids, have the peanut butter's in the other room. Go to town.
Yes. There's always so much going on in life. I want to be able to slow down and enjoy, time with my kids and my husband and everything like that. So I know I'm always going to work. That's what this publishing company is. It's a way to work, but also have my passion involved in it. So ideally, I want to just be doing that and then getting to write alongside of that. And ideally, obviously, I would want to be a very well-known writer. But I don't know. It all comes down to the difference that I make with people. If my writing never goes anywhere, if it never makes it big or anything like that, I'm okay. I mean, again, we all want that, but that's not my end goal. Everybody's very, very happy to make money off of what they do. But I do it.
You can't write for the money. I mean, I'm sorry to interject. You can't do it with the hopes that that's what's going to happen, because odds are it's not. So you have to have the motive has to be you want to tell a story, you want to do something for you want to write something honestly that helps change people or get them to be more considerate of others. And I think that's the motive has to be. If those things happen and the success happens, that's like wonderful. On top of that, but you know, because I know people who, you know, there's a group on Facebook that I'm a part of, and they're all about teaching, like, well, write to the audience and people who are writing these genres that, and I just like, I too want to make money, but I couldn't write into something purely for a reader's sake, because I'm trying to say something, you know, like.
And that's great if they can do that. I mean, you know,
I guess there's a disconnect. It's like a job, like it's a mechanical kind of process. Like,
I can't make this a job or I won't love it anymore. And that's why I don't want it to be my job. I don't work with deadlines. I never set a deadline for a book. If I'm inspired, if I write, great. If I don't, then I don't. And I won't set a deadline for my books to be out and published unless the full book is written. Once it's written, then I know I can work on a timeline basis, but until it's done, I never want to create a barrier for myself and say, like, you have to have it done by this date. I think that it ruins my creative process. You know, like, it comes to me when it comes to me. I'm happy to write when I want to write. So yeah, I can't write. I can't write for the readers, and I can't write for anybody that tells me you have to have it by this date.
Right.
So yeah, I just that works for a lot of people, and that's awesome. I'm just not one of those people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Ultimately, it comes down to writing for yourself. You have to make yourself happy first and foremost. And that's one thing I don't take a lot of advice from, like, Stephen King, but he, on his books about writing, I figured he knows what he's doing, but he's a machine. I get that. This is what he does. And, but a couple of things I take to heart, like, you don't write for anyone else but yourself. And if you're happy with it, that's what matters. And that's kind of guided and steered me once I got into writing my movies and writing my books. I have to be happy with how it ends. And it's really wonderful. It resonates with other people if it makes them happy. But if they hate it, I can't help that, you know, because you don't know who's going to like what you write. You don't know, but it shouldn't bother you.
Yep.
Yeah. You should just assume some people are just not going to like it, you know? One of my books, I forget which one it was. It might have been Gage Black. I got like a 1-star on Goodreads, but no explanation, you know? Yeah. I'm like, that's fine. And then I got a 3-star on my book Toxic. It just said too many F-bombs, you know? So, and I thought, well, that's
always my favorite. I was like, it's just a word. I mean,
I know. Fine. Well, I wrote back, I go, what's the fucking problem with that? You know?
What are you doing?
I was like, yeah, exactly. And it was a purgative book. It was, you know, it was my 40 years of pent up apostasy coming out. I had to write it, just get it out of me, you know? And so it was a very emotional book, you know, very cathartic and cleansing. And, but it's raw, you know? And I part of me thought, do I go back and change that language? I go, no. Cause even though it's raw, it's me. I know how to write. I know how to be funny. I know how to be sarcastic. I've written for 40 years. I know what I'm doing. Right. But you know, it's just a book that some people get uncomfortable with reading. I'm like, that's fine. So
yeah, well, I mean, but if you took you take fuck out of there, then it's like people are like, well, there's not enough fuck in there. You know, like
right, exactly.
Gonna make everybody happy, and that is. Every new writer should just learn that now. Like, it does not matter. You will owe the thing that made me feel better when I first started writing was going on Goodreads and looking up really famous writers and seeing their 1-star reviews and going, like, even they have haters. It's okay. Like, not everyone's gonna like your stuff, and that's fine, because there's always readers out there for what you're writing. There's always, you just have to find them.
That's the trick, I think. Right. Getting the book in the right hands. Yeah, I know. And I just started laughing. I just laughed. I thought that was great. Like, I'm fine with that. You know?
That's cool. That's the worst thing you're going to say about my book. Like, awesome.
Yeah, really. But, you know, the great thing was that the rest of the review was very positive. Like, the person agreed and understood where my point of view was coming from and had similar experiences and growing up in church, but that, and even with the caveat saying, well, this is just my personal taste, and I'm like, that's fine. I just think it's funny to get a review with that. That's the thing. I'm like, that's great. Yeah. And I that's a word I have. Gage Black has all the words, but my cozy doesn't, my other book, because
it depends on your.
I'm writing the genre that Gage Black is, all bets are off. But just two more questions. What advice would you give for anyone who wants to write?
It's kind of what we've been saying this whole time.
That's what I was thinking. Like you gotta know this answer.
Well, it's all good. I mean, it's, it's just, write what you're passionate about, not necessarily what you know. I don't ever want to say write what you know, because that we wouldn't have half the books that we do. If you're going to write what you don't know, educate yourself on that first. But I mean, like, write what makes you happy, write what's in your heart. I mean, not that my depressive books make me happy, but right. I write what comes to me, and you can always take stuff out later, that doesn't work or that you don't like or whatever. But just let the words flow. And as much as you can, don't write yourself into a box. Don't let genres or readers or anything like affect what you're doing. I personally don't think people should read their reviews, because I think that, especially if you're in the midst of writing a book or writing a series, if you read reviews, it might change what you're doing. And you want to stay true to yourself. And unless you are the type of writer that you are trying to write just to make money, which again, there's people out there, great, you do you. But I think that for a lot of people, they are in it to tell a story or their story. And therefore my advice to them is just to write. Don't let, if your beta readers come in and say, well, you should change this, it's their opinion. That beta reader may say something that's like, you should change this, but the other beta reader loved it. So you're always going to have conflicting points of views. You're always going to have different opinions. Also, my second thing would be find the right editor. I, again, wouldn't be where I am without my editor, because she helped me grow as a writer so much in such a short amount of time. And if I could have easily gotten somebody that was just all about taking my money, just doing the basic edits. And because I knew nothing when I found my editor, and she could have easily have taken advantage of the situation and just went, here's your book, here you go.
I fixed the comma splices.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. She took the time to write out. She actually paused during the editing and went, I know you sent this to me, but she's like, there's a lot of work here that you could do yourself. Do you want to take the time to do it? Do you want to take the time to learn? And I was like, absolutely. So she took the time to type out all the main problems, like all the developmental things that I needed to do. And she sent like, here's a video to watch on this, and here's how to do this or whatever. And I went through and just overhauled my book myself, and I sent it back to her, and she's like, so much better, but here are some other things that you'll want to look at. And I was like, okay.
We're refining as we go.
Yes. And then she finally, got to that point where she just had to do a basic edit to it. And now I know those things. So as I'm moving forward with my writing, now she just has to do little developmental edits, but then, the just basic editing of it. And she didn't have to do that. She literally could have just went, here's how long it took me. Here's the money you owe me. Here's, the grammar fixes to it. Cause like I said, I knew nothing. I didn't know there were different types of editors, and I didn't know, how all of that worked. So finding her was, definitely one of those things where, again, I wouldn't be where I am without her. So, I mean, all my books being published are to her and Caitlin, because they're why I'm here. So,
yeah, well, that's great. I have the privilege of doing editing for a few other writers, and both the comprehensive and copy editing. So, because my years teaching English, I'm good at finding those kinds of grammar and punctuation. It's just like, I can't help but see it. It just jumps out of me, Yeah. It is important. And I think selecting beta readers, a group of beta readers, I think is equally as important, because I'm my editor. I spent 22 years teaching English. I'm going to edit my books.
Yeah.
But I have really good beta readers, though. Some who are good at like finding like minutia and like the tiniest of like typos and whatnot, which I I rely on.
Yeah.
And I have my readers are also writers of different genres, and they know they can be blunt and honest, and
Yes.
tell me what needs to be fixed. And I want that from them because I trust them because they want my success.
Yep.
And so there's no ego involved. I'm not worried about being hurt, and they know they can't hurt me. The last book, I knew there were two things when I wrote it. I'm like, in the rough draft, I'm like, these are two questionable choices that I made. And my first beta reader called me on those two things. And I said, well, thank you. This is a confirmation, because I kind of thought going into this that these are the two things. And once I had to take out a whole chapter, essentially, which wasn't working for the book.
Right.
It's okay. I took it out. I can use it. I can dispense the information out over time. And I just made it with the one major change in the story, which really affected everything.
Yes.
But that was important. And again, the fact that I didn't tell him what to look for. I just gave it to him.
Yep.
But he confirmed my own suspicions. So I think that's every bit as important for you as having your editor. And this way, my beta readers sometimes act like that comprehensive editing, where they let me know, because it's easy to get too close to what you're writing. And
yeah, for as many times as we've read it.
yeah, exactly. And I try not to let anything get in the way of making it better. It's like, I know at the end of the day, it's my book. And I want help from people who are going to try to make it as good as possible,
Yeah, be open to it. That's, that's people, just be open to it. You don't have to take their advice,
right.
But you should be open to hearing it, and make sure that you're making the objective. You're not saying like, well, I want to keep this, out of principle. Does it actually work? Does it actually make sense? Does it make the story, is it in there for a reason? And if you know that it is, and you know that it works, then great. You don't have to take their advice, but be open to listening to the advice that they're giving you.
Right. Because they see what's there and not what your brain, because you know what you're trying to say. And it doesn't always come out as saying what you try to say, because your brain fills in all those gaps in logic, and all you get is, you're filling in all the potholes, and sometimes the readers see those potholes. And no, I totally agree with that. So, and last question, where can we find your books?
So you can go to my website that has like all the links to all the places, which is jenniferjensenbooks.com. Or, I'm on all the platforms for any ebooks. My paperbacks are currently through Amazon. They are like at local bookstores around here in Grand Rapids. And then, but all of that is on my website as well. The content warnings and everything are listed on my website as well. I like people to know that, because again, as we've talked about, some very heavy topics. It's definitely not required that people read the content warnings, but people know whether they're the type of reader that need them or not. So I like to make people aware that they're available if people want them. So that all of that stuff, I actually have playlists on my website as well. Each book has its own playlist. So that's on my website too, where people can hear the music that was inspired in my books, or the different songs that are actually in the books. So
I love that. Oh, I like that you put songs in your books. That's great. I do that for my cozy series, because there's a character who's an autistic young, like a teenager, who has a small wave radio station, and he loves playing 30s music. And so I like 30s music as well. So Lionel Hampton and the vibraphone, things like that. And so I will put songs that I'm listening to while I'm writing those books. I will go ahead and put them in the story, because I'm like, oh, I think this would be a good one. It fits the mood of the piece or whatever. So no, I loved it. That's great. Jennifer, I want to thank you for spending some time with me, and answering all my questions and having this lovely conversation. I've really enjoyed getting to know you as a person and as a writer, a publisher, and I'm excited to see where your publishing goes, your company. I think that's fantastic.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for having me on. This was a lot of fun.
Great. My pleasure. I'm glad you had a good time. I'm going to do my commercial, and then we'll get out of here.
Okay.
You've been watching and listening to Between the Lines. You can find us at unsaneradio.com. Listen to full episodes or download to your device. You can watch us on our YouTube page, Between the Lines Podcast. If you're watching, that's where you're at. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. It's right down there. If you know someone who'd like our show, tell them about us. And if you're a writer and would like to come on, Between the Lines for a chat. You just email me at betweenthelines54@yahoo.com. That's betweenthelines54@yahoo.com. And Jennifer, here's my cheesy outro. See you next time, Between the Lines.
Love it.
Right?